President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu revealed the Middle East peace plan earlier today. We will discuss the prophetic implications of this event on this edition of End of the Age. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. Thank you for joining me on this edition of End of the Age. And I thought what we would do today is discuss the Holy Roman Empire. No, I'm just kidding. It's a joke. Everybody got on Facebook and everything's blown up. The news is blown up, but I'm just kidding. What else could we talk about? The peace deal that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu announced this afternoon. That's what we're going to be talking about on today's program. Everybody lighten up a little bit. So we're talking about Trump and Netanyahu's announcement. The Jerusalem Post and many others have revealed the deal of the century. What are the key points? That's what we're all interested in. Because the question is this the peace agreement that will launch us into the final 7 years? That's what's on everybody's mind. Now, I'll tell you what I'm going to do today and then what Irvin Baxter is going to do tomorrow. Because I got the actual agreement, which I have a copy of and Irvin has a copy of, I got it so late, I wasn't able to go through the whole thing exhaustively. So what we determined that I would do is to take you through some of the key points in it and then go through as much of the prophecy as I could. Irvin Baxter is going to dissect it, analyze it, and then go through everything, the whole agreement with you on tomorrow's program. That way we can do like a two-part series here and make sure that you really get it, because this is very, very, very important, obviously. So, the two-state solution. Now we know, remember the 5 characteristics of the peace agreement. Two-state solution is going to be created. The Jews living out there in the West Bank, where the two-state solution will be created, will be allowed to live under Palestinian authority. The Temple Mount will be placed under a sharing arrangement, allowing Israel to rebuild her third temple. And then Israel will retain control of Jerusalem all throughout this interim agreement, this final 7-year period. So let's talk about what was included in the peace agreement, using the actual agreement that was given by Netanyahu and Trump today. So the two-state solution is going to be created. That's in the plan, but no Israeli security risk. So more than double the Palestinian land will be, they'll get more than the land that they actually possess now. And the Palestinians will have 4 years in the plan for them to kind of get on board and to become an independent state, and for the Israelis and the America and the international community to see, hey, are you really willing to play ball with this, or did you just give lip service to it? Are you really willing to demilitarize and not go in and just see this as a way to go in and wreak havoc on the nation of Israel? It's very, very important. So one of the key things that was in the Peace to Prosperity plan that they launched was a map. And I want to go over that map now. It's very, very important, because when we talk about borders, this is one of the key things to the peace deal. You remember the Bible, one of the key things that the prophecy says is that the Antichrist will confirm the covenant with many for a 7-year period. Well, the covenant is the covenant between God and Abraham, where God promised him the promised land through the lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob for eternity. Well, in this, the peace agreement that we are looking for prophetically will set the final borders of Israel, and it will the international community will recognize Israel's right to exist in the Middle East. So when we talk about borders here, and this map lays it out, it's very important that we know what the issues are and where everything lays. Now, when we're talking about borders, Trump's plan features a map of what Israel's new borders will be, and it should enact the plan fully. Israel is going to retain from 20 to 30% of the West Bank and is going to lose a small amount of the land down in the Negev Desert near the Gaza-Egypt border down in here. And then the Palestinians will have a pathway to a state of about 70 to 80% of the West Bank. And Israel's going to maintain control of the borders, which is absolutely essential to her security. And this is the first time that a U.S. president has provided a detailed map of this kind. It's very important, these borders, the map. The conceptual map has been designed to demonstrate the feasibility for a redrawing of boundaries in the spirit of the UN Security Council Resolution 242, and in that manner, it meets the security requirements of the State of Israel. It's been one of the big things in past negotiations. Now, I know we're coming up to a break here. I'll get into some more of the map when we get back from the break, and then we'll continue on analyzing the peace agreement that Donald Trump and Netanyahu rolled out this afternoon. Very, very detailed. We've never seen anything like this before. So unprecedented times right now, everybody. Is this the deal that will start the final 7 years?
About our trip, it was a wonderful experience. We totally enjoyed the time spent with other believers, worshiping and experiencing the places where Christ walked. One of our favorites was being on Mount Moriah, where the Holy of Holies are, the Dome of the Spirit. And the teachings that Brother Baxter did was so enlightening. It was so much to take in. It will take us another month or two to really grasp the full extent of the knowledge we received on this trip. Our tour guide in Israel was fantastic. He was very knowledgeable. I think God chose him just for us. Thanks, Jana. Our lives will never be the same. We will try to do this tour again. Mike and Julie L., Cayman Islands.
Join us May 1st through May 16th, 2020, for a trip to the wonderful land of Israel and the Holy Roman Empire reborn.
We've seen Bible prophecy fulfilled like never before. From the halls of the United Nations to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, Endtime Ministries continues to reveal the Bible prophecy in the news headlines around the world every day. Whether it's through our broadcast or online at our Jerusalem Prophecy College, your gifts enable us to put vital materials in the hands of those who need it most. Because of you, we continue to replace fear with faith in the hearts of Christians around the world. We will continue to see prophecy come to pass at an even swifter pace. We need your support. Your donation of any amount enables us to continue to broadcast and be a voice in the ever-growing censored media. To become a partner or give a one-time gift, visit endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME right now. That's 800-363-8463. Go online now. Visit endtime.com.
So I wanted to go through just a few more aspects of this map before I get into the rest of the agreement. But the agreement says that it will deliver significant territorial expansion to the Palestinians, which is huge. Because if you look right here in the middle of the map, this is going to be the two-state solution that they're proposing. And this dark blue area will be the area that is the Palestinians will be located in their new state. And if you look, it's right here in the heart of Israel. So it's not like they've totally discounted the Palestinians and said, hey, we don't want anything to do with you. They're actually giving them a lot. And it's very important. Donald Trump said we're kind of over-giving them a little bit. And it's very important. They are interested in the Palestinians as well. I hope the Palestinians see that. But then it also takes into account the State of Israel's valid legal and historical claims. And I would add to that biblical claims. Because this whole thing we're talking about all comes down to and goes back to the Bible. I mean, history is one thing, archaeology is one thing, but at the end of the day, it all goes back to the Bible, everybody. But it also avoids, and this is very important because we've talked about it for years, one of the 5 characteristics is that a two-state solution will be created. This map provides for that. And remember that Netanyahu and Benny Gantz have both said that yes, we will implement this. We agree with it. Netanyahu said today, I will implement this on the based upon the situation that Trump has revealed here today. They both bought into this. But another characteristic is that the Jews living in that Palestinian state, because there are Jews that live in this dark blue area, the plan says that it avoids forced population transfers of either Arabs or Jews. So this big, huge gray area out here that Israel will retain, there are Palestinians living there. They'll be allowed to live there under this peace arrangement. In the blue area, there are Israeli settlements out there. A lot of them have these numbers on them, these white numbers, and they've got a path or a road, or there'll be a main road that goes to each of those settlements. They'll be allowed to live out there under Palestinian control. And so it's something we've talked about for years now. Those would be 2 of the characteristics of the 5 that we've been looking for in the prophesied peace agreement. The plan also enhances mobility for both Israelis and Palestinians within their respective states, with all the roads and the highways and bridges and tunnels that'll be built. And it provides a pragmatic transportation solutions to address the needs of the Israelis and Palestinians enclaves that are described as follows. So there's going to be this, all these dotted lines here, that's going to be a huge tunnel from Gaza to the West Bank. And then there's going to be all kinds of roads and highways and different things to make it real easy for the Palestinians, because they're going to try to help them economically. And if they set up businesses and factories and things like that for the Palestinians, they'll have to have highways and things for them to get their produce and stuff and shipping. They're going to have a port out here. So they're going to build ports and airports and all kinds of different things. Desalination plants. And so they're really going to help them economically. You remember the economic portion of the plan that was rolled out in June of last year by Jerry Kushner. So it's really a well thought out plan. It's like nothing really that we've ever seen, very detailed, and it is going to allow for a two-state solution, but not just say, hey, there's a two-state solution for you, see if you can make it work. They're going to help them economically. So very, very, very important. Now, I'm going to move over to the desk, and then I'll get into some more of the peace agreement here that they rolled out today. So another characteristic of the Palestinian, of the peace deal that Donald Trump rolled out today, and one that we've been looking for, the prophesied peace agreement, was that Jerusalem would remain under the control of Israel all throughout the final 7-year agreement. Well, the plan states that Jerusalem will remain the undivided capital of Israel. So it's very important. This is the third aspect. Remember the 5 characteristics we've talked about. This is 3 of them. The plan says that Jerusalem, that the Palestinians are going to have a capital in Jerusalem based on the northern and eastern neighborhoods that are outside the Israel security fence, Kfar Akab, Abu Dis, and half of Shafat. And Trump said that he actually said in his speech that that America would open an embassy there. So these guys are serious. He's opened one in Jerusalem, the United States Embassy, but he said, hey, once we do this and Palestine has their capital there, I'm going to open an embassy there. So he's dead serious about what he's talking about. He's not just giving lip service to it. And I think the Palestinians should really look at this. Now, obviously, scripturally, I don't think Israel ought to give up any of the land. I don't want to see them sign a peace agreement. But the Bible says they will, and so we got to talk about it. Because the Bible says there will be an agreement signed that launches us into the final 7 years. It's very, very critical. Even though the Bible says they shouldn't, they're going to. Now, so those are 3 of the characteristics of the 5 that we're looking for in this peace agreement. Now, the political status of Jerusalem. It's one of the most complicated issues in achieving peace. It has been from the get-go. And that's resolving the question of the political status of this biblical city. Prior to 1967, a divided Jerusalem was a source of great tension in the region, obviously. It's when 67 is when Israel captured East Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. And with Jordanian Israeli forces separated by barbed wire, the Israeli residents of Jerusalem, they were endangered by sniper fire. I mean, Israel's been fighting for this for thousands of years now, literally. So a division of Jerusalem would be inconsistent with the policy statements of the Jerusalem Embassy Act of 95 of the United States. All former presidents who have been involved in the peace process have agreed that Jerusalem should not be physically divided ever again. But again, I just told you that the Palestinians will also have a capital there, but they will never consume East Jerusalem and like they have before, or especially the entire city of Jerusalem. Israel's going to maintain control of that all the way through. So back on December 6th of 2017, of course, on behalf of the United States, Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. That's not going away. And you'd have to read the whole thing. I was reading like crazy before I came in here. But the president also made clear that the specific boundaries of Israeli sovereignty in Jerusalem would be subject to those final status negotiations between the parties. So that's very important because he laid out a plan here, and this could kind of become the parameters or like a blueprint for the plan. But the Palestinians could come and say, hey, we agree with this, but what about this? I mean, it's like clay on a potter's wheel. It can be molded and shaped a little bit. And I'll get into that in a minute when we talk about the Temple Mount, the sharing arrangement and stuff, that the other 2 characteristics of the peace agreement. So the agreement says that we believe that returning to a divided Jerusalem, and in particular having 2 separate security forces in one of the most sensitive areas on earth, that would be a grave mistake. Well, that's obvious. You can't have 2 armies living within, half or 2 or 3 miles of each other. So while a philosophical or a physical division of the city must be avoided, a security barrier currently exists that does not follow the municipal boundary and that already separates the Arab neighborhoods. So in Jerusalem from the rest of the neighborhoods in the city. So the physical barrier should remain in place and should serve as a border between the capitals of the 2 parties. You understand the huge concrete wall that Israel has. We go through that every time we go from Jerusalem into Bethlehem. You got to go through that big checkpoint Charlie, they say, and that huge security fence. So Donald Trump is saying, hey, we're not going to take that down. We're going to leave that up. That'll become the border. And then Jerusalem will remain the sovereign capital of the state of Israel, and it should remain an undivided city. The sovereign capital of the state of Palestine should be in the section, even the fact they're calling it the state of Palestine should let the Palestinians know that it's more than just lip service to this. It's very important. So that this should be in the section of the East Jerusalem, their capital, located in all areas east and north of the existing security barrier, including, like I said, Kfar Aqab, Shafat, and Abu Dis. And it could be named Al-Quds or another name that's determined by the state of Palestine. Now, so there you can see we've got 3 of the 5 characteristics of the prophesied peace agreement. So, I mean, as I started reading this, I thought, oh, here we go. because I know that's on everybody's mind. Is this the one? I don't know how many texts and emails and Facebook posts I've got saying, okay, what's going on? Well, we'll get to that. And the next thing in the agreement, it said that no Palestinians or Israelis would be uprooted from their homes. Well, obviously, that's part of the number 2 characteristic, that the Palestinians or the Jews, the settlers, would be allowed to live out there under Palestinian control. So let's talk about the settlements for a second. Israel they'll retain the Jordan Valley and all Israel's settlements in the West Bank in the broadest definition possible, meaning not the municipal borders of each settlement, but their security parameters. So here's one thing. Well, I'll get to it in a second. We'll talk about the Jordan Valley in just a moment, because a lot of people get confused by that. And it also includes 15 isolated settlements, which will be enclaves with an eventual Palestinian state, unable to expand for 4 years. So there will be Jews that are allowed to live out there let's say they got a farm and they don't want to leave their farm that's making them money. That's how they make their living. So they'll be allowed to stay out there if they want to. They're not going to just jerk them up like they did in Gaza years ago. So the IDF will have access to the isolated settlements. In order for the settlement part of the plan to go into effect, Israel will have to take action to apply sovereignty to the settlements. So the actual plan says the United States has designed this conceptual map to include these following features. The Israel population located in those enclaves that remain inside contiguous Palestinian territory, but they're part of the state of Israel, they have the option to remain in place unless they choose otherwise and maintain their existing Israeli citizenship. So again, I'm laying out 3 of the original 5 characteristics of the prophesied peace agreement. Irvin's been teaching about this for decades now. And this peace agreement rolled out has 3 of them in it, okay, so far. Now, let's talk about security. Okay, so I'll go through security and then I'll get into the Jordan Valley. So it's reported that Israel is going to be in control of security from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. In other words, they're not going to allow the Palestinians to have an army. And that's very, very important, obviously, if you understand what the political situation and the boots on the ground, what's going on there with Gaza and them firing rockets into Israel and this, that, and the other. So, but they're going to be protected by Israel, who will have borders all the way around this Palestinian state. And that the IDF will not have to leave the West Bank, and that no change to Israel's approach to Judea or Samaria would be needed. So, the Palestinian state. The plan does not include immediate recognition of a Palestinian state. However, it expects a willingness on Israel's part to create a pathway towards the Palestinian statehood based on specific territory, which is about 70 to 80% of Judea, Samaria, including areas A, B, and half of C, the big areas that they have divided up right now in the West Bank. The state is only going to come into existence in 4 years if the Palestinians accept the plan. And they need to move in and start showing, hey, yes, we're serious about this. We're going to make it work. If the Palestinian Authority stops paying terrorists and inciting terror, and Hamas and the Islamic Jihad put down their weapons, then yeah, we'll say, hey, they're serious about this. But in addition to that, the American plan calls on the Palestinians to give up corruption, respect to human rights, their freedom of religion, and a free press, so they don't have a failed state. I mean, you've got to have these things or it's never going to work between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And if those conditions are met, the U.S. will recognize a Palestinian state and implement the massive economic plan to assist it. So you remember the economic plan Jared Kushner rolled out in June of last year. They're not, day one, if they sign the plan, they're not going to hand them $50 billion. They're going to make sure that they are on board with this plan and that they're going to do what they say before they start building some of these roads and factories and all this other stuff. So you talk about being well thought out. Somebody's really put the time behind it. All these Jared Kushner, Jason Greenblatt, and all these guys that are on Trump's peace team. So the actual plan says, under the two-state solution, that there's a realistic solution that would give the Palestinians all the power to govern themselves, an autonomous situation, which is what the prophesied agreement would, that would be one of the characteristics. But not the powers to threaten Israel. So it necessarily entails the limitations of certain sovereign powers in the Palestinian areas, referred to as the Palestinian state, such as the maintenance of Israeli security, responsibility, and other Israel control of the airspace west of the Jordan River. And this vision really creates a realistic two-state solution in which a secure and prosperous state of Palestine living peacefully among a secure and prosperous state of Israel in a secure and prosperous region. Donald Trump seemed very sincere that he is willing to help them. Imagine the United States having an embassy in a Palestinian capital. I mean, we're not going to have that unless we're going to commit to protect them as well. So they wouldn't need an army. So if these steps are taken and the criteria set forth in this vision that they've set forth is satisfied, then the United States will support the establishment of this Palestinian state. So man, as you can see, they've really put some thought behind this. And 3 of the characteristics of the prophesied peace agreement have been met. When we get back from the break, we'll talk about maybe some of the others.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter. This book by Irvin's grandson provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your relationship with God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Get your book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
If ever people needed to hear the unvarnished truth, it is now. There are some subjects that are not politically correct to talk about, but they're urgent. That's why I'm grateful for Endtime magazine. If you're not a subscriber, you're missing information that will impact your life. Endtime has a bi-monthly magazine that explains how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. You can get a 2-year subscription for only $29. You can also get a bulk subscription and pass them out to your church. We have gotten reports that Endtime magazine has caused spiritual awakenings in churches when they see the prophecies being fulfilled right now. You can start your own ministry and leave them in doctor's offices, libraries, laundromats. You never know if you might be responsible for saving someone who is searching for the unvarnished truth. That's what the magazine has done in many lives. Call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 and get your subscription today.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
You know, everyone, I have read so many articles about how the Arab countries would react and that the Arabs are on board with this. I read one by Nikki Haley, the former ambassador, our former ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. I know many of you guys love her, as do I. She's done so much good for the United States and for Israel. She said, look, I understand the Palestinians and their situation. They don't want to negotiate this, that, and the other. But what we really need to do is look at how the Arab nations react to see if this thing's going to work. Because if if we roll this out and offer them all the $50 billion of economic help and this, that, and the other, and they just sit back, fold their arms, and say, no. Even though it looks like they're really trying to help the Palestinians, the Arab neighbors are going to look at them and think, do you even have yes in your vocabulary? You guys need to take this deal. So Nikki Haley, many other people have said, look, let's look to the Arab nations and see how they react once this thing's rolled out. So that's something that we'll have to be looking at. But Donald Trump said in his speech today, more than once, he said so many other countries are willing to work with us on this. And many of them are the Arab nations. He talked about Saudi Arabia and some of the others, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates. And so it's very important when you look to the prophecy. He said so many other countries are willing to work with us. Daniel 9:27, which speaks of the agreement, it says, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. For the overspreading of abomination he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Donald Trump said more than once, there are so many countries that want to get on board and help with this project. So you can see a lot of it really lines up with the prophesied peace agreement. In the plan, it's very important, Hebron, Netanyahu said Hebron, Bet-El, Shiloh, which the Ark of the Covenant was in Shiloh for centuries. It was recognized by the United States in the plan as part of the Jewish state. And this is very important because the international community doesn't see it that way. You remember when Donald Trump withdrew the United States from UNESCO, the straw that broke the camel's back. UNESCO, it's the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Probably best known for its World Heritage Program. They go around recognizing all these they protect cultural sites and traditions around the world, advocating humanitarian efforts on the environment, education, and science. Well, for decades, UNESCO has undertaken the task of recognizing the most significant sites in the world as part of the famed World Heritage Site Program. However, over time, like most of the United Nations organizations, it's become very anti-Israel. The United Nations is very anti-Israel. Back in 2011, the United States stopped funding UNESCO after it voted to include Palestine as a member. On October 3rd, 2016, Israel's Prime Minister announced that today UNESCO adopted its second decision this year, denying the Jewish people's connection to the Temple Mount, our holiest site for more than 3,000 years. But what really ties into the United States decision in the agreement is the Cave of the Patriarchs down in Hebron. On July 7, 2017, UNESCO determined that the Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron is a Palestinian heritage site. And it means that it's not a Jewish site. Get this, though. Even though Abraham purchased the Cave of Machpelah in Hebron back in Genesis 23, and you say, well, hey, Abraham is the father of the Arab nations as well. Okay, I totally agree with that. However, listen at who's buried there. Abraham and several members of his family are buried in there, including Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, and Leah. Through the lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The only one who's missing is Rachel, and she's buried near Bethlehem where she died in childbirth. So it's from these patriarchs and matriarchs that the nation of Israel was birthed. But in the eyes of the international community and UNESCO, it's a Palestinian heritage site. I mean, you kind of got to just laugh at some of this stuff. It's really not a laughable matter, but I just shake my head because I'm like, how could you deny that that's a Jewish heritage site? So that's the international community. Well, in this plan, Donald Trump and them are recognizing Hebron as a Jewish heritage site. So it's very important, really, what's going on here. It's Donald Trump standing in the face of the international community and saying, hey, we put this peace plan together, get on board. And a lot of people are getting on board with it. Netanyahu, so think about this. Again, Netanyahu agreed to negotiate on the basis of Trump's plan, and Benny Gantz said that if he's elected, he'll go ahead and implement the plan. So both of them, both of the people that are leading in the elections to get elected in Israel March 2, both of them have said they bought into the plan. Then the actual peace plan says there's, and this is very key, it talks about religious aspects of the holy sites and different things in Israel, but there's no mention of an international sharing arrangement or the building of a third temple. Now, remember the 5 characteristics of the prophesied peace agreement. There's going to be a Palestinian state created. The Jews living out there will be able to live out there under Palestinian control. And Israel's going to retain control of Jerusalem all the way to the end. Those 3 are in this. They're in the agreement. The other 2, though, is that the Temple Mount's going to be placed under an internationally supervised sharing arrangement, and they're going to be allowed to rebuild their third temple. Those 2 things are not in this agreement. They do talk about the Jews and Muslims and everybody be able to worship on the Temple Mount, and that, but yet the status quo, which would be the Muslim Waqf, who currently controls the Jordanian Muslim Waqf that currently controls the Temple Mount, that it would stay like that, the status quo situation. So, what happens to the Temple Mount being placed under a sharing arrangement and them being able to build their third temple? Again, I said this is the blueprint for a future peace in the Middle East. And it's like clay on a potter's wheel. I don't like that. I'm going to move this over here. They've talked about land swaps and a lot of different things. Irvin will get into some of the great detail tomorrow on the program. But this is the parameters they've set out. I'm sure that Donald Trump, Netanyahu, and all of them would say, hey, we're willing to negotiate on X if you'll negotiate on Y. This is a blueprint that's laid out, and it's a very good blueprint, I must say. But it's not the end all. It's, hey, let's start here, let's figure out what works, and then go from there. We know from the prophecies of the Bible there's going to be a third temple rebuilt. And so somehow or another, the status quo up on the Temple Mount has to change. In this peace agreement that Donald Trump's rolled out, its status quo stays the same. Will it end up like that? No. Maybe it's a future peace agreement. I don't know. I know that there are 3 specific ones of those characteristics that are laid out in this peace agreement. But there are 2 of them that appear to be missing. So we'll have to see what happens, because this is not the end all here. This is a blueprint. But it's very key that they laid out the religious aspects of the Jerusalem issue. And this is what could lead into the sharing arrangement and the building of the third temple. Somebody has done their research when it comes to Israel's religious aspect when it comes to Jerusalem. The religious. So it states, we understand the theological interpretations that differ within the region. Both the Palestinians and the Israelis. The descriptions below of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are not intended to be definitive theological interpretations, but it is nevertheless clear that each of these 3 great faiths has its own connection to Jerusalem. The Trump plan recognizes that. For Judaism, Jerusalem, and this is somebody did their research here. For Judaism, Jerusalem is where Mount Moriah is located. According to the Jewish tradition, it was there that Abraham nearly sacrificed his son, Isaac, until God intervened. Centuries later, Jerusalem became the political center of the Jewish people when King David united the 12 tribes of Israel, making the city the capital and the spiritual center of the Jewish people, which it has remained there for nearly 3,000 years. And this is so key because I just wrote a huge article on this. In the peace deal, it says, and King David's son, King Solomon, built the first temple on the Temple Mount. Palestinians deny that, but it's in the agreement. So you say, well, man, the Palestinians are going to stop right there. Again, let's see what the rest of the Arab nations come up with before we just write this thing off, because there's a lot more to it than this, but I love that they have that in there. King Solomon built the first temple on the Temple Mount, on Mount Moriah. So, well, they say on Mount Moriah, but the fact of the matter is it was up on the Temple Mount. According to Jewish tradition, inside the temple, within the Holy of Holies, were stored the Ten Commandments, and it was revealed by God to Moses on Mount Sinai. The first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians, 586 BC. The temple, the second temple was built atop, not on the side, not on the slope down below, but atop the same mountain, and stood until it was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. They're recognizing it was built in the Temple Mount. However, Jerusalem never lost its holiness to the Jewish people, and it remains the direction to which Jews throughout the world turn their prayer and the destination of Jewish pilgrimage. Every year, on the 9th day of the Jewish month of Av, Jews fast, mourn, and commemorate the destruction of the two temples. And although Jews pray today at the Western Wall, which obviously is the retaining wall of the Second Temple, the Temple Mount itself is the holiest site in Judaism. There are nearly 700 separate references to Jerusalem in the Bible. And for 100 generations, the hopes and dreams of the Jewish people have not been encapsulated, or have been encapsulated by the words, next year in Jerusalem. Well, then the plan gets to the Jerusalem holy sites. After the 6 Days War in 67, when the state of Israel took control of all of Jerusalem, that's when they captured the eastern portion, the state of Israel assumed responsibility for protecting all of the city's holy sites. And those holy sites include, without limitation, the Temple Mount. But obviously, because they feared the wrath of the international community and peer pressure and a lot of other things, they turned around and gave control of the Temple Mount to the Jordanian Muslim Waqf. And that's the status quo today. Israel. But if you go up on the Temple Mount today and you see a policeman carrying an AR-15 or another military weapon, that is an Israeli policeman. It's not a Muslim. Very important.
Does the book of Revelation frighten you? Do its symbols confuse you? For centuries, the book of Revelation has been misunderstood and misinterpreted. In Revelation, the unveiling of Jesus Christ, Volume 1, Irvin Baxter unlocks the mystery of the book of Revelation with in-depth analysis and commentary like you've never heard before. This 10-part definitive DVD series and 268-page comprehensive commentary book covers the first 12 chapters of the book of Revelation, featuring on-location photography, classic artwork, and symbolic illustrations. You'll walk away with complete understanding and peace about the events happening during the final years on Earth. These comprehensive study tools, available for $299, will deepen your biblical understanding as you dig into the original intent of the book, answering the mysterious prophecies and symbols of the book of Revelation. Don't miss this special offer. Call now, 1-800-ENDTIME, or go to endtime.com to order. Call or go online now to get this comprehensive Bible study.
So this next point's a very important point because they say, and this kind of lends to who really loves Jerusalem, who feels a religious connection to Jerusalem. Because it says, unlike many previous powers that had ruled Jerusalem and had destroyed the holy sites and of other faiths, the state of Israel is to be commended for safeguarding the religious sites of all and maintaining of the religious status quo. So it's very important when you look at it, think about it. The second temple stood on the Temple Mount. But when the Romans came in, they destroyed it. In 70 AD, Roman General Titus destroyed the temple. And the Palestinians, the Muslims, when they came up on the Temple Mount, they dug out a lot of dirt and soil and different things out from under there and built a mosque under there, under the platform on the Temple Mount. And they just took it down and dumped it in the Kidron Valley. And that's the Temple Mount Sifting Project, is when they went down there and said, hey, there's very important stuff in there. And they went and started finding all kinds of relics and coins and all kinds of different things in there. And so most other people that have went in, they've conquered it and destroyed it but Israel come back and said, whoa, hold on. This is the Temple Mount. This is Jerusalem. This is where God said 40 times in the Old Testament, I will put my name there. And it's very sacred to them. Just about everybody else has walked in there and started destroying stuff. So, very important that we understand what's going on here. This is in Trump's peace deal. He's laying all this stuff out. So he says, because Israel has came in and they need to be commended for taking care of the place, given this commendable record for more than half a century, as well as the extreme sensitivity regarding some of Jerusalem's holy sites, we believe that this practice should remain and that all of Jerusalem holy sites should be subject to the same governance regimes that exist today. So in particular, the status quo at the Temple Mount should continue uninterrupted. So again, you go up on the Temple Mount today, we go there twice a year, and there are Muslims that go around with, walkie-talkies and this, that, and the other, and their cell phones. But if you see somebody with a gun up there, that's an Israeli soldier. Because they allow them to, let's say, worship up there and this, that, and the other and control it, but military control, that's Israel. And so very, very important, because everybody knows who really loves the place at the end of the day. It's Israel's first holy site on the planet, and to the Muslims, they say it's their third holy site, behind Mecca and Medina in Saudi Arabia. So the Jerusalem holy sites, according to Trump's plan, should remain open and available for peaceful worshipers and tourists of all faiths. Now, they do talk in here about the Jews being able to worship up there. They say people of every faith should be permitted to pray on the Temple Mount, of every faith, including Jews. Now, there have been Jews going up there lately and praying. Some of them have been arrested, a lot of different things, but they're saying that this agreement says that everybody ought to be able to go up there and pray in a manner that fully is respectful to their religion, taking into account the times of each religion's prayers and holidays, as well as other religious factors. So when it comes down to it, something like this could lead into when they say, hey, we signed this peace agreement and the Palestinians are not allowing us to pray like they do or like other religions. And then they come in and work out some kind of arrangement. Now, this is hypothetical. This is not in the agreement. But it does say everybody should be able to pray equally up there in the peace agreement. Let's say they got it signed. They go before the international community or the United States or whoever and say, hey, they're not allowing us to pray up there. They still want to keep us from praying. Whoever monitors the thing goes in and says, look, Palestinians, you or Muslim Waqf, whoever, you've got to allow these people to pray. There's bickering back and forth. And they say, okay, somebody's got to monitor this. We're going to put it under, let's say, a sharing arrangement like they have down in Machpelah in Hebron at the Cave of the Patriarchs, where the Muslims are allowed to go in for a while, and then the Israelis are allowed to go in for a while. And it works. It's a possibility they could do that in the future on the Temple Mount. And as a result of that sharing arrangement, Israel gets to build her third temple. Now, again, that's a hypothetical situation. I don't know how that's going to play out, but it does allow for Israel to pray up there, which would be a huge thing when they could go up there and pray, male and female, go up on the Temple Mount and pray just like any other nation respectful of everybody's prayer times, holidays, and this, that, and the other. That would be huge. Now, if that could be the scenario in the peace agreement, that would bring the final two. Again, it's hypothetical. But the Bible says that that Israel will be allowed to build her third temple. Again, how all that plays out, I can't tell you at this point. And so, very, very important. Now, it all brings us down to the peace agreement. Again, I'm going to go through the 5 characteristics. And if you're reading through the agreement, I mean the whole thing. So what they did, if you go to whitehouse.gov, I think I posted it on the Facebook and some different places. But the plan is out there to see. The plan, the maps, everything. They've downloaded the whole thing, and they put it together with, you can go on I think it's the whitehouse.gov, I think, and you can see the economic portion, you can see the political portion, and then you can see the whole thing all put together. I don't know, I don't remember how many pages it is, but it's humongous. And it covers it. It's very, very detailed. So I know for a fact there's 3 of the characteristics. The 5 is, again, there's going to be a 2-state solution created. The Israelis are going to be allowed to live out there under Palestinian jurisdiction. The Temple Mount's going to be placed under a sharing arrangement. Israel's going to rebuild her third temple, and Israel's going to retain control of Jerusalem all the way throughout. So before we come to the end of the program, one of the things I wanted to kind of clear up, because a lot of people have said, well, how can Israel annex the Jordan Valley and the Palestinians still be allowed to have their own state? Well, if you look at the map, I don't know if the guys could bring the map back up. I think I've kind of, we're not able to do that because I'm already over here. But if you can, I think they're bringing the map up on the screen. If you look at the map that's in the peace deal, so if you're looking at this screen, you're looking to your right. There's an area, that'd be the Jordan River that comes all the way from the top, from the Sea of Galilee, all the way down the right side or the eastern side of Israel. That's the Jordan Valley. You see it's all a beige color. The Palestinian state is the dark blue. Israel's going to retain control of the Jordan Valley. They need that for security reasons. And so they're not going to allow the Palestinians to butt right up against Jordan. And so Israel, when Netanyahu talks about annexing the Jordan Valley, he would annex the Jordan Valley that's down in that strip. On the eastern side, you have the Moab Mountains in Jordan. And on the western side, you have the West Bank of the Jordan Valley. And so that's where the 2-state solution would be created in the blue. That's in the West Bank. That would allow them to have their Palestinian state, while all the way around that, all that beige area would be Israel. And so that's very, very important right there that you understand that. And if you look at all of the little highways and the roads and different things that get to the settlements, that's what's going to allow Israel to get in there should there be a problem. Now, here's the deal. Here's what Jesus prophesied in Matthew 24. It's very critical that you understand that map. Jesus in Matthew 24 said, when you therefore shall see the abomination of occur as spoken of in the prophet by the prophet Daniel, let them which be in Judea flee. Judea would be where the dark blue section is on the map. That Palestinian state, that would be the West Bank. Let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. In verse 21 in Matthew 24, it says, for then would be great tribulation, such as never been before, or nor will be after that, ever. And so something about when Jesus said, when you see that abomination of desolation occur, 2,000 years from there, he didn't know then, but we know now it's about 2,000 years. The abomination of desolation, when you see an Antichrist stand in a rebuilt Jewish temple, he wasn't talking about the second temple because he had just prophesied that it was going to be torn down. But when they said, well, hey, tell us what's going to be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age, he was talking about his second coming. And he said, when you see the Antichrist stand in a rebuilt Jewish temple, because he said in the holy place in Matthew 24. The holy place is in the Temple Mount. All of the apostles knew that. When you see the Antichrist standing in the rebuilt Jewish temple and proclaim to be God, something about that event would trigger great persecution in the Judea. Jesus said Judea. Modern day, we would call it the West Bank. It's the blue section where the Palestinian state's going to be created. Something about that is going to cause horrible persecution of the Jews in the West Bank. Jesus told them, let them which are on the housetop, don't even go down to get your billfold. Hit the ground running. If you're out in the field working, don't even go home. Hit the ground running, because there's going to be horrible persecution. And so this is Scripture. This is prophecy. This is going to happen. Irvin Baxter's been teaching about this for decades now. Now look what's involved in a peace agreement. I mean, specifically, 3 of them that we've been talking about, 3 of the 5 characteristics are in there. And there are some things in there, like everybody needs to be able to pray equally and this, that, and the other, that could lean towards the other 2. So you say, well, Dave, are you saying this is the peace agreement? No, I can't say that at this point. I don't see anything else on the horizon. And I know that 3 of them are in there, 3 of the characteristics, and 2 of them, we could be seeing them here before very long. So again, at this point, I don't know. Perhaps Irvin has seen something in the peace agreement I didn't say, and he's willing to walk a little farther out on the limb than I am on tomorrow's program. We'll just have to see. But at this point, wow, what a very detailed peace agreement. If you want to read it, if you can't, you should be able to find it online. I think it's on whitehouse.gov. And you go check it out, read it, look at the maps, look at everything, study the Scriptures, and just know that if this is the one, let's say they get it signed over the next year or so. Who knows? This could be the one that starts the final 7 years to the second coming of Jesus Christ. It is a very detailed situation, and it could be the one. At this point, we don't know. I wish I could give you more of a conclusive answer, but I'm not going to sensationalize this thing and try to scare everybody and get everybody all hyped up. I'm going to tell you at this point, we simply do not know. Now, if Irvin Baxter comes on the radio tomorrow and wants to trump that, we're going to go with what he says. But at this point, I've read through as much of it as I could. I simply don't see those final 2 about the sharing of the Temple Mount and the building of the 3rd temple in the peace agreement. Maybe they'll happen when the thing's all said and done and signed. Maybe they'll allow for it. I don't know. But I wanted to go through as much of it as I could with you, because what a development, what a prophetic event. And God bless you. Let Irvin talk to you tomorrow.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of Endtime Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with Endtime Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page.